What I chose to speak about today was complaints made by members of the public against the police for the way they do their job. When they get it wrong, what avenues are available to us? Spoiler alert, not many avenues. I have a client who's been through the ringer with this system, and with her permission, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her story. I'm going to refer to her as Jane Doe. She was in a long abusive relationship with a man, John Smith, not his real name. And as with many abusive relationships, she was made to feel that she was the problem. He gaslit her regularly, but as time went on and she was able to get a bit of space and distance, she began to see the relationship for what it was. He was charged and convicted of several offenses in which she was the victim. However, seeing it for what it was a process for her, as it is for many of us who become involved in problematic relationships. And he wanted to talk to her. She didn't want to cut him out of her life completely. He threatened suicide. She wanted to help him. So she spoke to him and saw him occasionally. And one day, in what started out as a meetup in a public space, which she had thought was very safe, he raped her. She then complained to the police, and the police, relying on myths and stereotypes about how women who've been sexually abused should behave, concluded that her trauma response was not credible. They didn't believe her because of how she responded to the trauma, and they decided not to charge him. She dealt with a series of profoundly patronizing and paternalistic issues from the RNC, including one officer who said, most victims are not strong enough to go through the process. There was evidence lost, there was months of silence where she didn't hear anything, and there were many serious errors which denied her her right as a human being and as a citizen to have her complaint investigated fairly and without bias. Not to mention that there was no accounting and no bringing to justice to John Smith. She then filed a public complaint. She complained about the police officer's conduct using the Public Complaints Commission. The public complaint process is set out in 30 pages of legislation. It is 7,673 very long and confusing words. To make this process more comprehensible to me, I put it in a chart. Courtney, would you be able to show the chart? So this is basically what happens when police officers are accused of misconduct. And as you can see, I'm not taking you through this chart, it's just there as a visual aid. This process is not at all uncomplicated, it's not straightforward. She was left to manage this process by herself. She had no right to a lawyer to represent her. The chief of police has a lawyer at the hearing and to assist him. Paid for by the government. The accused police officer has a lawyer paid by her union, but no one is paying for a lawyer for Jane Doe. Okay. Now, I can hear you all thinking that she's my client and I'm her lawyer, but our lawyer-client relationship is hamstrung by the rules surrounding the Journey Project. The Journey Project is a fabulous government initiative which allows people who've been sexually assaulted to get 4 hours of legal advice that is paid for by the government. However, like any government project, it has rules. The legal advice must be dispensed in most cases in 4 hours, and it does not allow for legal representation. So legal advice is good, but legal representation is much better. I couldn't write letters on her behalf. I couldn't go to court and ask the judge to order the RNC produce the file so that she could have a look for herself to see where they went wrong, as opposed to just the things that they said to her that she knew went wrong. We had less than the tip of the iceberg. I could not go to hearings with her. I couldn't make arguments on her behalf. I couldn't do these things because she couldn't afford to pay me. But nobody else in that hearing room that she eventually attended by herself without legal representation, no one else was required to pay for their own lawyer. Everybody except Jane had the police file at their disposal. Jane was told it wouldn't be given to her because we don't give disclosure at this stage. She might get it at the next stage if she was able to get that far. Now, I would ask you all to turn your minds to the Muskrat Falls inquiry or the Lemaire inquiry into wrongful convictions and some inquiries that we've had into police shootings. For these public inquiries, where very male interests are at stake, lawyers are paid for by the state and they have disclosure. We have a system of public complaints against police officers, which is seriously flawed and it needs to change. Despite these odds, Jane managed to convince the chief of police that there had been many errors made in the investigation of her complaint, but she was not given the opportunity to properly address most of the systemic issues because the system was designed to prevent her from doing so. She came to this process with many privileges. She is white, cisgender, heterosexual, and she's also very smart. Many people do not have the determination and drive to accomplish what she was able to do, and that should not be, especially in these days when recent revelations have given us much reason to fear the police as women. Thank you.
So much work to be done. Lots of stories I'm interested in there as well. Thank you for that.